You are listening to the UPSC Radio Lab. 5 residential complexes with 343 flats overlooking the scenic canal of Kochi backwaters were razed down after the Supreme Court order in Maradu Grama Panchayat near Kochi, 4 of which came upon the banks of the Vembanad lake, a Ramsar site. A Ramsar site is a wetland site designated to be of international importance under the Ramsar Convention or Convention on Wetlands. It is an intergovernmental treaty established in 1971 by UNESCO. There are various sites that are declared as Ramsar sites in India. Look down in the description box for the link that lists out these sites. Before we get into the latest development and understanding of the coastal regulation zone, let us understand the synopsis that had led to the razing down of the buildings. In 2006, CPM ruled Maradu Panchayat granted permission for construction for 5 waterfront apartments: Holiday Heritage, Kayaloram, Alpha Ventures, Holy Faith and Jain Housings. 9 months later, the Panchayat itself issued a notice to the builders following a directive by Kerala Coastal Zone Management Authority, quoting that the approved site fell under Coastal Regulation Zone 3, where no construction is allowed within 200 meters from the coast. The Panchayat, which had to obtain an NOC from Kerala Coastal Zone Management Authority as a prerequisite before approval, didn't file an application to gain permit. The builders got an interim stay from Kerala High Court in 2007 and completed construction. In 2016, Kerala Coastal Zone Management Authority approached the Supreme Court, arguing that the Panchayat issued construction permit without their concurrence. On May 8, 2019, Supreme Court declared the construction as illegal and ordered the buildings to be razed down. Today, Kerala is grappling with over 26,000 reported instances of coastal regulation zone violations in the state. What are coastal zones? The coastal zone is a transition area between marine and territorial zones. It includes shore ecosystems, wetland ecosystems, mangrove ecosystems, mudflat ecosystems, seagrass ecosystems, salt marsh ecosystems, and seaweed ecosystems. I repeat, the coastal zone is a transition area between marine and territorial zones. It includes shore ecosystem, wetland ecosystem, mangrove ecosystem, mudflat ecosystem, seagrass ecosystem, salt marsh ecosystem, and seaweed ecosystem. An action plan was introduced in 1991 under the Environment Protection Act 1986 with an aim towards sustained utilization of coastal zone. Based on that, the Coastal Regulation Zone notification was issued by the Ministry of Environment and Forest to regulate activities in coastal areas of India. By definition, coastal land up to 500 meters from high tide line and a stage of 100 meters along banks of creeks, estuaries, backwaters and rivers subject to tidal fluctuations is called Coastal Regulation Zone. It includes intertidal zone and land part of coastal areas and not the ocean part. Now, what is a high tide line? A high tide line is a line on the land up to which the highest water line reaches during spring tide. Now, when I say spring tide, it has got nothing to do with the spring season. The spring tide means springing forth, the tide springing forth during new moon and full moon. And the neap tide comes 7 days after the spring tide, a period of moderate tides when sun and moon are at right angles. The coastal regulation zones are classified under 4 categories: Coastal Regulation Zone 1, 2, 3 and 4. Coastal Regulation Zone 1 includes ecologically sensitive areas. Coastal Regulation Zone 2 includes built-up areas. Coastal Regulation 3 includes rural areas. and Coastal Regulation Zone 4 includes water areas, and those includes water areas up to territorial waters and tidal influenced water bodies. In CRZ1, which is ecologically sensitive, lies between high and low tide line and are very much essential for maintaining the ecosystem. Natural gas exploration and salt extraction are permitted in this zone. Areas up to the shoreline of the coast come under CRZ2. Here, no unauthorized structures are allowed. And under CRZ3, the rural and urban areas which fall out of CRZ2 are covered. In CRZ3, only agriculture-related activities and public facilities are permitted. Aquatic areas up to territorial limits, as I said before, come under CRZ4. The Maradu Grama Panchayat, where the Vembanad lake is situated, and the 5 residential complexes had come under Coastal Regulation Zone 3, where, as I said before, no construction is allowed within 200 meters from the coast, and only agricultural facility and public facilities are allowed. Post-enquiry, the Supreme Court finally ordered the razing down of the building. Projects which are located in CRZ1 and CRZ4 will require necessary clearance from the Union Government. The powers for clearances with respect to CRZ2 and CRZ3 have been delegated to the state governments. The latest Coastal Regulation Zone Notification 2018 has relaxed certain construction norms and also relaxed the No Development Zone criteria. Temporary tourism facilities are now permitted in No Development Zone and CRZ3 areas. The CRZ1 is further classified into CRZ1A and CRZ1B. CRZ1A consisting of ecologically sensitive areas and CRZ1B covering areas between low tide line and high tide line. Rural areas with a population density of more than 2,000 per square kilometer that falls under CRZ3 shall now have a no development zone of 50 meters rather than the 200 meters. What could be the possible causes of violation? 1. Lack of experts familiar with the CRG rules in the center and the state. 2. No classification of violations based on zones. 3. Too many amendments of notifications. Around 25 amendments of notifications have already taken place. Even the Comptroller and Auditor General of India pointed out that the frequent amendments made to the notification have paved way for commercial and industrial expansion in coastal areas, while natural disasters have become more frequent, causing severe loss to human lives and properties. What are the challenges faced? 1. Socio-political and economic turmoil could be triggered. 2. Position of traditional coastal dwellers and fishermen, where there shall be a demand of declaring them as ecosystem people and allow for construction of house and livelihood facilities, or give them adequate compensation and rehabilitate them. 3. There is no distinction between small scale and large scale violation. 4. Razing a structure. Further, it can cause further harm to the ecology, and only the buildings are being razed down. The foundation of the buildings cannot be razed. Point number 4. Central government is bound to check on violations. Only central government can decide whether the demolition of structure can be adopted as a remedial action under Environment Protection Act 1986. In this case, there is a delay in process. The scrutiny of the coastal regulation zone violations could trigger widespread protests and resistance in state. How the coastal states will tide over the impending crisis remains to be seen. And the way forward will be a clear classification of various zones after due consultation with the fishing communities, stakeholders, scientists, and the departments concerned. This is the need of the hour. Thank you for tuning in, and see you in the next episode. You are listening to the UPSC Radio Lab.